The Japanese government has recently announced plans to discharge 1.3 million tons of contaminated water, which has accumulated at the site of the Fukushima nuclear disaster. This water was used to cool the reactors after the explosion and is therefore highly hazardous. While the Japanese government maintains that the release of this water is safe, there are growing concerns over the potential environmental impact, particularly with regard to the destruction of the marine ecosystem and the safety of seafood. Today, we will delve into the Fukushima nuclear disaster and the controversial decision to release contaminated water. Nuclear power plants and radioactivity. Nuclear power plants harness the power of atomic nuclei's fission chain reaction to generate heat energy that can be converted into electricity via turbines. Nuclear energy is highly efficient compared to other methods, such as water, thermal, or solar power, and does not contribute to global warming. However, if a nuclear power plant experiences an accident and releases radioactive material, it can have severe consequences, including cell mutation or death upon direct contact with the human body. The contaminated water produced in nuclear power plants contains a range of radioactive substances that can result in devastating effects on human health, such as genetic mutations, cancer, and reduced fertility when absorbed. Why Japan is trying to release contaminated water. The massive earthquake that struck Japan in March 2011 was followed by an immense tsunami that hit its east coast. The Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant had an accident at that time and leaked a massive amount of radioactive substance. The radioactive fuel that melted and hardened after the explosion is still in the reactors and generating heat. In order to cool down the fuel, water must be poured in constantly, and this radioactive water is increasing day by day. Japan has built tanks to store the contaminated water until now, but the tanks have reached their capacity. Japan has chosen to release the water into the ocean because it is the least expensive option, but limiting Japan from discharging the water is difficult. Release plans and concerns. The Japanese government claims that it will mix the contaminated water with seawater to meet environmental standards before releasing it. However, experts criticize that diluting the contaminated water would not reduce the total amount of radioactive substances. Furthermore, the total volume of contaminated water is so massive that it is impossible to investigate exactly which elements are dangerous. If the contaminated water from the nuclear disaster gets discharged into Fukushima's sea, it could also affect Korea. The contaminated water will spread to the entire Korean seas, starting with the Jeju Sea. Even if the radioactive concentration is greatly diluted after the contaminated water travels through the Pacific Ocean, we cannot ignore the possibility that fish exposed to radioactive materials could pose risks to humans. There has been no case before where such a massive amount of contaminated water was released into the ocean after an accident at a nuclear plant, so we cannot determine what the exact impact would be. Therefore, the public should pay attention to the issue of the Japanese government's disposal of contaminated radioactive water.